Welcome to the Nalbinding class. In your kit, if you got one of the kits, you will have a plastic yarn needle, you'll have some yarn, you'll want to get some scissors, and then you'll also have some handy guides for some of the stitches that we're doing. Get started. You're going to take a length of yarn. You don't work from a yarn ball like you would in crochet or knit. This looks very similar to knit and crochet and is oftentimes mistaken for it, but it is a little different, and it's also defined as looping a fiber together. So once you have your length of yarn, it should be a good size length, but not too long that it's going to keep getting tangled. You're going to put your needle on one end, and then you'll also take and make a knot. And I've seen it called a pretzel knot, but it is also an overhand knot. And we're going to put that on our thumb. So you have a tail here and have that towards your palm. You kind of tighten it up. Have your working yarn, the yarn connected to your needle out front. And we're going to go down in on the side here. You're going to make sure it's underneath everything. You don't want it like stabbing through your yarn or anything. And then you're just going to pull around so that you have two loops on your thumb here. Now you're going to take the top one, the one that was originally on your thumb, and sometimes it does get switched up on you. So if you want to make sure you have the right one, give your working yarn a tug and you will see this one tighten up, hopefully. If this one tightens up, switch them. So then what we're going to do is called an Oslo stitch. And the Oslo stitch is one of many stitches related to nail binding. There are different stitches that are named after the location they were found at or after somebody that published the information on how to do it. So you see I did one there. I'm going to take and do this a little slower for you. I'm going to bring it up. So what you do is you've got your first one, that top loop, you bring up top. Your bottom one, which is the newest one, is the one that tightens up and it's on the bottom here. And then you're going to go in from the front. So you just take your needle, we're going in, and then we turn, and then go underneath these two loops here. And this is going to become your new loop. So you have this pinched here, but you can let go of that so that it for sure goes around your thumb. If it comes up around your thumb and closes off, you're just gonna knot it and it won't work anymore. So then we're just gonna do the same thing, bring up that top one, go in from the front, turn, and under the two. And you just do this for as many as you want. If you're making an item, your pattern's not going to tell you do this many stitches. It's going to tell you a measurement because there really isn't a gauge for this because everybody's thumb is different and your tension is also going to be different. In the beginning here, you're probably going to be pretty loose. So this was something I started practicing with. So it was really loose in the beginning, and then as I figured out how to do tension, you can see it started tightening up like this. So back to this. In the front, turn under these two. And the two are the loop that was newest and under the string that is the working yarn. And you make sure that tightens up around your thumb. Now when it comes to tensioning, you can do that by pulling on the string here and making sure it's tight against your thumb. Now, nail binding can be done without a needle. So it doesn't necessarily have to be done this way. You could just kind of loop it through and you could have it set down on the table and looping, but this was a common way of doing it to make it a lot easier. But that means nail binding could have been done before the needle developed, and it could have also been done before even spinning was developed. It could have been done with different kinds of fibers that were able to be connected together. So I'm getting close to the end of my string. So the next thing I'm going to do is join my yarn together. And I can take it off my thumb. These loops here, we want to make sure they do not get pulled tight. So what I'm going to do is take the clip that I had here, and those should also be in your kit. And I'm just gonna clip that around, and that'll hold it in place until I get back to it. And I'll show you how to put that back on your thumb after we do our Russian join. For the Russian join, I'm going to actually use a different color so you can kind of see the two pieces. And what I'm going to do, and because my needle's really big, I'm just kind of do it with this and then pick it up later. But if you've got a smaller needle, you can just make a loop like you normally would. So like have it threaded and then do a loop. And what I'm going to do is just thread my needle through the yarn here, making sure to get a good amount of it worked through. So I've got quite a bit here on my needle. I'm going to thread this through. And then we're going to pull that tail down into itself, basically. But you want to make sure to still have a loop. I'm going to pull this down, hold that end of that loop so that I don't lose it. And then I'm just going to tighten that up. And then I can trim this if it's really long, but that's pretty good. And then the other side, we're going to have our other color. This time I'll just thread it through this way. Then, once again, work my needle around. That should be enough. Pull it on through. And I don't really have to worry about protecting that loop this time because it's already threaded through the other string. And now you have a pretty good join here. So to pick up my nail binding, I'm just going to take my stitch saver there, put my working yarn back in front of my thumb again, and then put these two loops back onto my thumb. I can pull on this and make sure that my bottom one is the one that tightens. That was good. And then I take that top one and I pinch it just like we had before. And I might suggest putting your needle back on before you do that, but you can also just kind of do it that way. Okay, so then you just go right back to it, going in from the front, twisting so that you go through these two, and making sure it captures it around your thumb. Now you may have to kind of work that join in carefully. But there we go. You could also do a knot. It would probably be hidden by the method of Nalbinding. It's just going to take a little bit more finagling to get it in through that loop like we just had to do with the Russian join. So then I'm going to continue Nalbinding, doing the Oslo stitch, carefully pulling my join through. Now, joins would have traditionally been done using the spit method, which only really works with a fiber that is a natural fiber like wool. So if you do have wool yarn, you could do that method, and it's basically you can spit on it or you can use water so that it's a little more hygienic. And you just felt it together by rubbing the two ends of the wool together while it's wet. And it might end up a little loose in this area if you don't tighten it too much with the joins. And see, like, it looks like a mess here, but once you get it past that area, it starts straightening itself out. So don't worry if it doesn't look too right in the beginning. Let's see, I did have this a little loose because of that join, but then once we start working our next row, it'll kind of cover it up. Nail binding's pretty forgiving with mistakes, so unless it's a really big mistake, you don't really have to go back and fix it. So I'm just going to keep doing a couple more, and then I can show you what going back and fixing it would look like. Haven't made any mistakes on this yet, but say I did, I can take and start going back. So you're always going to want to have your two loops. I'm going to take my needle off and just kind of pull it out. So then just keep working back, pulling out loops as I go. So that would be my two loops at this point. But say I want to go all the way back here. So I can see that loop, then these loops. So that might be like where I'm wanting to pick this back up. So then I just put this back on my thumb, have my working yarn to the front, rethread my needle, and then go back to doing my stitch as before. So then once I've got a good amount, I can start to make a loop. So say you want to put something around your wrist, this would be enough to do it. I actually have too many, so I might undo those last couple ones I did. And put it back on my thumb. So now we're ready to join our ring. To make it a ring, I just make sure that this is going all the same direction. We can also tighten up this end here. That makes it a lot nicer. And what we're going to do is we're going to do an Oslo stitch like before, but the first thing we do is go in through this first loop here. So we go in through the front, we go in through the front on this one, turn inward. And it might help to hold some of this stuff with the other fingers in your hand just to kind of give it support. And then you pull just like before, and I might tighten it up just to make sure it has a nice tensioned stitch as we connect those two. So then, much like crochet, you're just going to work into all the loops around the edge. And bring that one up, twist down through those ones, make sure it comes around my thumb, and tighten, bring up, find my next one, which is this one, in through those, and like so. Get ready for my next Oslo stitch, in to the next one, through the front, down through those. And then as I get low, I can add in more yarn. I'm going to take this off and show you. And here it is starting to be connected together. You can see it kind of has a step here. It'll also have the step on this side. When you go to sew in your ends, you can kind of fix that a little bit, but it does help you know kind of where you are in your project. So like, you know, you've went all the way around once you reach that area again. So I'm just going to make this a little longer, and then I can show you increasing and decreasing. So here I've made it once around, and you can see it's starting to make our fabric. And where I have those joins, I can just kind of trim those to get them out of our way, and they should tuck down into the fabric itself. Now, when you're working in this area where the tail is, it might start getting in your way, but once you start getting a little farther, it won't be so much of a problem. And remember, it's just you pick up your next stitch, you go in from the front, twist it, and go under these two. And then make sure that loop ends up around your thumb. Now, increasing, so if you want to make something bigger, all you have to do is just do another stitch in the same stitch. So I already did this one, and I'll just go in from the front on that one, pull that up, go in from the front here, and now I've done a second Oslo stitch into the same stitch. And if you were doing a couple increases in a round, you might want to spread them out, like one on this side, one over here, and maybe one over here, and that way you would increase it up to 3, and the same with decreases. Now a decrease is done by taking 2 of your stitches. So these next 2, I just pick them up. I'm going to put this back here, go in from the front, and then go under those 2. And now I've done a decrease. So not that much different on increases and decreases as to crochet. I'm just going to do a little more, and then I will show how to finish off a piece. And I'll give you some history into Nalbinding. So it's actually uncertain when Nalbinding was first developed. It's more than likely during prehistory, since we don't really know. And it could have developed before the needle, it could have developed before spinning, it could have happened after. And it's thought to be possibly developed from braiding or knotting or net making, but we're really not sure. Here I am, ready to bind off, and all I have to do is take it off my thumb, then go to the first loop that was on your thumb and tighten that up until it matches up with everything else. Go to the second one and then tighten that up. It's going to tighten up that first one. And then you just pull on your working yarn until that tightens up. Fairly easy to finish. And then you would just, like finishing your ends in any other piece, sew in your end. And this is actually pretty loose where I was working, but then you can just kind of weave in your ends and trim. And that kind of brings down that step as well. So I'd do it on this side as well. Now this would have been done a little more traditionally with thicker yarns to make nice warm clothing. It was done by Vikings, Egyptians, it was used in the Middle Ages, and it was used in a lot of different cultures. It is believed to possibly be developed at the same time in different cultures around the world, just like knots were. And here you can kind of see what it would look like with thicker yarn and how it ends up working up to something that is very warm. Um, the book that I got a lot of my information from was this Nalbinding, What is in the World Is It? And it has information about Nalbinding, but also has some patterns and shows different stitches as well throughout it and historical pieces that you can see. This is considered an endangered craft, but it is still popular in Scandinavia. It's oftentimes called knotless knitting or single needle knitting, and it's starting to get reintroduced into Europe again because it is a valuable craft that can create strong fiber pieces. And it's known for having strong pieces because, like, if it snags or something, you can just kind of pull on it and get that loop back out. And it doesn't just like unravel like knitting would. Sometimes pieces would be felted as well to make it even warmer and solid. If you look in a book that publishes different stitches, they are noted using the Hansen notation method, which is named for Egon Hansen, who developed this method and to describe stitches in 1990. So the Oslo stitch that we are doing here today is labeled as UO dash UOO. So the U stands for thread below under a previous loop. So that's what's happening here. And then thread above over a previous loop. So that's what's happening here. We're going in from the front, and then the slash is the turning point, so we're turning here, and where that loop is gone now. And then U-O again with these, and O. So we're under those two. And it actually, so it would be depicted based off of the way it looks here. And really the notation is a little confusing, but I think once you've kind of practiced and learned a couple other stitches, it'll make more sense. The oldest needle discovered was ever found in Eastern Europe more than 30,000 years ago. It was made of bone. The oldest piece of nail-binding textile was found in a cave in Israel, and it was dated back to around 10,000 years old. Binding was found in a 3,000-year-old grave in China, and that was a hat. And I finished that off. So you can see here, weaving in those ends does get hidden a lot better. There we are. And we can wear it as a bracelet. So good luck. Happy nail binding. And if you have any questions, you can always contact with the contact information at the end of this video. And a good resource is nail binding. What in the world is that? And also I will link a video series that I found very useful for me to learn by Bonsai Woman. Good luck!